So many people waste money on stuff that adds no value to their lives. And the brutal truth is, when you do that, you're not just wasting money today, you're actually stealing it from your future, potentially financially free self. So if you want to live life on your terms with wealth that buys you freedom, then you need to break the habit of spending on things that don't serve you. Now, budgeting can sound boring. People hear the word and think spreadsheets or patronizing lectures and about skipping takeaways. But in reality, it's much simpler than that. It's just about deciding how much of your income you'll spend and how much you'll save. And in this episode, we're just going to tell our own stories, how we like to budget day to day and the practical frameworks that you can actually use to take control of your money without feeling miserable or like a monk. Now, Jan, I don't think I know anyone else as stingy as you. And I mean that in the kindest way possible. But I know that you've built wealth. So why don't you spend it?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jonny. I think one of the main reasons why I was be able to reach a financial position that I am in right now was because I intuitively lived below my means. That's just something that was, I don't know if I was born with it, but it's definitely a huge part of my mindset. I don't enjoy spending money unless I get something in return that really helps me, that I really need. And in my opinion, living below your means, for me, it creates more freedom in the future. That's why I enjoy doing it. And it's something I do on a daily basis. And for most people, I think budgeting well, spending less than they earn is the single most important aspect in building long-term wealth.
Is that attitude something that you've always had, like the scarcity attitude, or is that something that you actually applied later on in life when you started to build wealth?
I think it's something I had at least from a very early age. My mother told me a story once that I was maybe a toddler, and these shopping carts, sometimes they have a seat, and especially for a child, where you can put a child in, so it doesn't have to walk. And I was looking at the price tags, right? Obviously not understanding what these mean. And I said, too expensive. It was literally one of the first phrases that I learned growing up. But that's probably it doesn't have anything to do with my behavior currently, but it's kind of a fun fact.
I didn't always share the same sentiment. Like, I've definitely become stingier as I've got, I don't want to say wealthier because I'm definitely not rich, but as I've accumulated more wealth, I've become stingy.
That's also, I'm not sure I agree with that word. I think being stingy sounds very negative, Jonny. Okay. I think budgeting is all about being very clever with your purchases. Asking yourself maybe twice whether you need something before going ahead and buying it. Doesn't matter the price tag, even if it's just a few dollars, right? These small purchases, they do sum up as well. The end of the month, if you can save $5 on a daily basis or something, it's $150. Just to bring that into perspective.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think, okay, then take it from your perspective. I've become smarter with my money as I've accumulated more of it, because I think I've had to go through the struggle and just the difficulties of building wealth. Just working hard is not easy, and so as a result, I've become more protective over it. Whereas when I was younger, if I was given money by my parents to spend, I'd just blow it. Which is quite sad, really, because that would be awesome. Free money would be fantastic, and I would probably hoard as much of it as possible now, at least. But things have changed since I've started to accumulate more wealth because I've had to work hard.
That's a really good point. Yeah, working hard for it, right? You're kind of exchanging your lifetime with money, right? You're getting money in return of dedicating your lifetime towards something. That creates some value for someone else or maybe for yourself. But that's something, you should not take that lightly. It's a serious thing, right?
Don't take the work that you've done lightly. And I think when you frame it in that way, if you struggle with budgeting at least, but you are someone that's working hard, I think when you start to frame how work is so impactful on the time that you have on this planet and how it drains the time that you have, then you might start to see how important the money is that you've accumulated and that you've tried to save it.
That's it. And thankfully now I'm in a position where I enjoy what I do on a daily basis very much, to be honest, but it hasn't always been like that. If I have to think back, I went through periods in my life where I had to do hard work, right? Tough labor. I was literally working on farms at some point, and moving furniture as well. So that was something I hated, but I had to do it in order to, make a living. So that's maybe that contributed probably towards the mentality I have right now.
I can also sympathize with people that do just spend their money on pointless things that provide very little productivity or value, possibly just on alcohol or just on constantly eating out or just the social aspect of spending. Because I can sympathize with people that don't enjoy their lives or their jobs, because they probably derive a lot of happiness, joy, dopamine from doing those things. That's going to be tricky for someone that wants to budget, because if you don't enjoy what you're doing day to day, where you're spending 8 to 9 hours at the office or whatever it is you're doing, if you're out on a farm, carrying stuff, lifting stuff, but you don't happen to enjoy that, it's going to be hard for you then to go home and live a frugal life. You know, we've got to try and cut to budget. So how do you approach a lifestyle where possibly you don't really like what you do for a living? You're not that happy with your life and spending does bring you some joy. Where do you even start?
Yeah,
with
honestly,
something like
Jonny, I think if you're in that position, you probably have to change the fundamentals a little bit before you go further. So if you can change your job towards something that provides happiness, that's obviously the best case. So what I would do is probably, budget for a while, right? Really cut back on your expenses for, let's say, 6 months. Even if you have to suffer a little bit, it will be worth it, right? You'll get that dopamine back later on. Try to save enough money that you have at least some buffer, you know, when you leave your job, right, your current job, looking for a new job, that you can at least sustain yourself for a few months. That would be very important. And then find something you really like doing. I know it's not easy. It's definitely going to be challenging even. But once you found something that provides some joy, it will be worth it. And then things do change. Trust me on that. If you enjoy what you do on a daily basis, it's just so much easier not to be dragged into this necessity to get dopamine out of purchasing stuff. And I think for a lot of people that's a problem. I never understood how some women in particular, but also some men, enjoy going shopping, right? Enjoy buying things. You know, they might not clothes. Yeah. They might not intend to wear at some point, or at least. Not on a daily basis. I just don't get that. For me, it doesn't make sense. And but a lot of people they still do it, right? And I believe that comes from maybe not being fully satisfied internally.
Yeah, we're also at the behest of marketeers that are trying to sell us a enjoyment from spending, a lifestyle from brands and from products that are available that we could have if we make a purchase. You know, if we buy that iPhone, if we buy that camera, if we buy that television, if we buy that watch, if we buy that jewelry, if we buy that drink. I think a big part of budgeting is about trying to ignore the noise of marketeers and trying to say, you're not going to have my money. I'm not going to be sold by your advert. Instead, I'm going to I'm going to be introspective, look at myself and go, is this something I really need? Is this something that really adds value or makes my life more productive and makes my life better and more useful? You will feel good about something when you buy it in the short term. You know, if you get a new watch, you get a new car, you get a new television, it will make you feel good in the short term, but that will quickly wear off as that product starts to age and weather. And it's really important that you're looking and thinking internally, is this something that can truly benefit me, this purchase that I'm going to make? Where does one begin? Is there like a number that we can say, like we want to save X percentage of our wealth, our income, our paycheck?
The best way to get started with it is to track your expenses for a month and then decide what percentage of your income you'd like to save. So what could that be? Maybe you could start with 10% or something if you're currently like literally spending all your income. 20%, 30%, that's obviously a lot better. The higher the number, the better. I mean, it's obvious. But then also be realistic about it. If you're earning, let's say, I don't know about salaries in the UK, but let's say £2,500. Yeah, you'd not be saving 50% of your income. It's not going to happen. Living costs are high. So be realistic about it, but set yourself a goal, whether it's 10%, whether that's 20%, whether that's 30%. And then you got to look at the areas where to cut these expenses. And speaking from experience, most people, they overspend in very predictable areas. It's eating out. Takeaway coffee is very dangerous in my opinion. Subscriptions, apps that you don't use on a daily basis. So think twice whether you need the Disney Plus subscription and the Netflix subscription. Maybe one is sufficient for you, you know. Clothing, also very, very dangerous. You know, you should always be well dressed, but don't fill up your your wardrobe with clothes that you're not going to wear on a regular basis, at least.
I think it's interesting to frame saving and budgeting from the perspective of what you earn and looking at that number and not saying, okay, I'm going to put this amount on my rent, I'm going to put this amount on my food, this amount on my entertainment, et cetera, and just going through all your costs and then saying, okay, this is what I'm left with, this is what I'm going to save. I thought it was really interesting where you said, look, pick a number, say 10%, and if you earn £2,500, you immediately, or 2,250, I can't remember what you said, but you immediately draw 10% from that. And that's like the first thing that people I think should be doing when it comes to budgeting is paying themselves straight away from their paycheck. Of course, if you're in a position where you are just about breaking even, then that's not going to be possible. And then you need to look at how you're going to fix that. But try not to go through your paycheck and cover all your expenses and your costs first. Try to just say, look, I'm going to take 10% straight away. And then you work away from there and you try to cover your costs. That, I think, is the fundamental of budgeting and saving. Because if you're just working away, right, Jan, and you're just left with, say, 2 or 3%.
Oh, absolutely. It has to be two digits, right? Will not be less than 2 digits. Anything less than 2 digits is unacceptable. And ideally it has a 2 in front, okay? At least. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
At least. Yeah, that's not that ambitious. That can be done for most people, at least.
As a solopreneur or like someone who's self-employed running a content creation business on YouTube, I have a limited company, and as a result, I'm able to pay the right amount of tax, but pay possibly less tax than someone that was on like PAYE here in the UK who was like employed by a business. But my point of that is, Jan, I love this way. I love how I have it set up because I have to then pay myself. I have to pay, the limited company has to pay Johnny P's, and I can make sure that's as little as possible. So I can pay myself roughly, it varies depending on the earnings because my earnings can vary from month to month, but it could be anywhere between 10, not 20%. I'm afraid, buddy, I've already failed the test, but it could be up to 15%. And that setup that I've got in terms of like saving money with tax actually benefits me in terms of budgeting as well. And I think I'd like to interject one point about tax here. Have a look at the sort of tax that you're paying and have a look how that relates to the work that you do. If you're in a position like me, you don't have to be a content creator or a YouTuber, but you could be someone who's a plasterer or a painter. Is there any way that you can set up a limited company? Maybe pay a little less tax, always seek tax advice from an accountant, of course, but that could be a good place to look as well.
So does that mean you really have to cut back on everything you enjoy? No, absolutely not. My personal approach is I do have a few categories that I spend quite a lot on, to be honest. That's, for example, housing, groceries, and a gym membership. A good gym is very important, and I definitely see an ROI there, personally, for my productivity. For example, my house, I have a great view here. It's inspiring, makes me feel better on a daily basis. And also in terms of health, right? If I eat great food, unprocessed food, right? High quality groceries, and I go to a good gym. And I don't mean like a luxury gym or something, just a gym with decent machines. Definitely there's a health-related ROI there as well. So that's what I personally spend quite a lot of money on. Areas I save on is eating out. I almost never do it. Not because I can't afford it, just I just don't. My girlfriend cooks great food, to be honest, and I don't enjoy eating in restaurants that much.
So that's the budgeting tip, people, is find a lady who can, or man who can cook well, and then you.
Or learn it yourself.
Tinder Gold.
Yeah, Tinder Gold, with Revolut Ultra, right.
Well, but that would be but sign up for the free tier.
Free tier might be enough for that. Okay, takeaway coffee, I never have it. I think last takeaway coffee I had was probably a year ago or something in an airport because I was falling asleep. Going out to party, rarely do it.
I think clothing is a big expenditure for many people, and it's super unnecessary. My wife laughs all the time because I wear clothes till the holes appear, till they literally deteriorate. You know, I bend over one day with a pair of jeans on and I'm in an airport and a hole rips down the middle.
Okay, Johnny, I mean, you have to draw the line somewhere. Sorry, but that's unacceptable. You have to wear good clothes. That's very important, right? You have to be dressed decently.
I mean, this t-shirt, Jan, right? Looks pretty
looks
good,
great, yeah.
Right? It's like 6 years old. It's 6 years old. It's
That's
6 years
perfectly
old.
fine, right? And once it breaks, you'll replace it, I'm sure. But don't wear a washed out t-shirt or something. Like that's something where I personally draw the line because, I want to look decent at least to participate in society.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot to be said about image and perception and like personal growth and moving forward in the professional world. Like you've got to put your best foot forward. But you don't want to inflict damage on the wealth that you might have in the future by buying loads and loads of clothes today to appear to be the person that you want to be in the future. Does that make sense? Like people are buying luxury clothes, premium brands, so they can appear to be the person they want to be. And that's someone that you could be in the future if you save now, but by doing what you're doing, trying to appear like you're wealthy, successful, is only hamstringing yourself for later on, which is, it's hilariously ironic. But I want to share something I do. I like to go to charity shops, Jan. Do they have charity shops in Panama? Like a lot of people think that it's not very classy or it's dirty, which I think is so sad. But I go to charity shops and spend money because you can find good deals. Shoes. It's so absurd to say out loud, but you get decent shoes, and you can get decent like electronics. You can get stationery. You can get cooking stuff like utensils. I mean, I'm into a charity shop. There's loads here in the UK these days, which is probably a sign of the times, but there are so many good deals to be had. I'm probably the last person, or at least I'm definitely not the demographic, like the socioeconomic demographic, at least for a charity shop customer. But I don't care. I'm proud of the fact that I'm not buying new things all the time and giving corporate Britain or corporate America my money for something that's poorly built, won't last. Like if you go buy something from a charity shop, it's like a decade old and it still works. That tells you something. That tells you it's going to last.
Hey, good point, honestly. There are no charity shops here, to come back to your question, but I definitely have been to some in Germany, and I like the mentality. Great. Should we give some more practical advice on how people could maybe incorporate this, these steps in their daily routine?
Yeah, just like a really easy to digest practical framework, Jan, about how we approach this.
So as mentioned before, track 1 month of expenses. How do you do that best? Most banking apps nowadays, they offer a categorized expense tracking. It's pretty easy. Just make sure if you're using 2 cards, for example, just make sure that one banking app feeds data into the other. Really depends, but some fintech banks offer that. For example, I think Revolut does,
and for free.
So that's where you get your data from. And then, set saving goals, ideally directly in the app. And what I personally would recommend is, as you mentioned before, just putting aside your goal, your savings goal, onto a separate account, ideally, or maybe a different bucket within your banking app. Some banking apps allow that. Then you try not to touch this unless there's an emergency. Does that mean that with the rest of your income, you can just go ahead and spend it as you want? I would still try to save as much as possible in order to potentially, even save more in that month.
Gamify it with yourself. That's what I like to do. I like to try and have competitions with myself each month and seeing if I can beat how much I saved from the previous month.
That's great. That's amazing. Yeah. And don't overcomplicate it. Like 99% of the YouTube videos do. You don't need a fancy spreadsheet mostly. Just try to keep it within one app. Use the expenditure tracking functions that are built in already, and then just go ahead. The basics are definitely enough in order to reach 99% of the result.
So if you wanted to start budgeting, Jan, what are the things that we have to look out for?
Yeah, definitely a few things. First of all, I would not cut on the wrong things, Being clever with your money, budgeting doesn't mean you need to live like a monk. You said it in the beginning really well. For example, saving money by moving into a stressful home that might hurt you more than it would help. The same thing with buying like super cheap clothes that would break all the time or that present you in a bad way. You still want to look professional, you want to look decent. So these kind of things, definitely don't cut in the wrong areas. And then lifestyle inflation sneaks in as your income grows. And trust me, I'm speaking from experience. You'll be once you have more money available, right? Once you've budgeted maybe for a year or something, you'll have a significant amount of savings very likely accumulated. Try not to spend that on stupid things, and that becomes tempting maybe. Maybe you've saved you've saved £25,000 or something within 1 or 2 years, and that money is now available, lying on your bank account, and you might be tempted to spend that, but just try to avoid it. Just really try to build a good foundation, and instead go ahead and invest that money if possible, right? Because that's how it will provide the biggest advantage to your future.
That's the beginning, really. I'm afraid to say that after 1 or 2 years of saving, you're really just starting the process, because you're then beginning to build a foundation of wealth that you can either earn interest through compounding as you add more money, as you add more savings, or like Jan said, this money that you can invest. Do not make the mistake of going and spending it. That would be a terrible idea, because you just worked really bloody hard to save it. That's your opportunity then to start growing it. And over the course of, say, 2 decades, if you invest that 25,000 in the S&P 500, and then there's, we don't have some sort of nuclear fallout or an apocalypse, that 25,000 could be worth as much as £500,000, or dollars.
And maybe one last thing to add here: it only works if you track regularly. So if you budget for a month, let's say, and then you stop doing that afterwards, it's not gonna help you move the needle, in terms of financial goals. So you really gotta do that for a long period of time, constantly make it a daily routine, ideally. Then it will be worth it. Trust us. Definitely gonna feel the effects of not spending on the wrong areas.
And as you start to build wealth, you need to look at where you're going to spend it and how you're going to invest it. Because if you are leaving these savings in a bank account, real world inflation will eat away at your money, and in real terms, it will lose value over time. But that's just part of the fun, because trust me, investing can be extremely fun, but you have to do it responsibly. So yeah, we've got a video on the best or some of the good apps to use for trading. And if you enjoyed today's video, if you have any questions for either Jan or myself, please drop them in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts, please do rate us. If you'd like, give us 5 stars. That'd be amazing.
Thanks everyone for listening. I definitely want it to be a measurable drop in the UK's GDP, the next measuring period after this podcast. So please go ahead, follow the steps that we outlined here, and let's save as much money as possible.